Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to try and keep it short. Lunchtime is around the corner. We just had an additional person on the panel, Nuno from our Mozambican office. Unfortunately, Rulo couldn't make it. He had some accident in Cape Town. So I'm Vikas from Brawl. Thank you very much, everyone. So, yeah, let me just get the slides. Okay. As we all know, in the last year or two or three, there's been a bit of a slowdown in economy and challenges in Angola, Mozambique, foreign currency issues. But despite this, we also saw new brands entering these markets with all these challenges. As Jao mentioned earlier, the populations are growing. And if you look at how the world sees Africa, when we meet with new retailers and we speak about Africa, this is actually what they see. There's a desert, it's AIDS, it's the blings, it's Obama land, it's hunger, and it's not the case. If you look at real estate, that's what I see from a real estate point of view. From a retail brand's point of view. Housing. However, some of it's true. Obviously, poverty do exist all over the world, not just in Africa. And transport infrastructure. And that's how we see Africa. So all these buildings and real estate you see there is all outside of South Africa. Some of them are developed by actors and some of the major funds. If you look at retail brands, LC Waikiki, I think, is a prime example. They entered Kenya first, before even looking at South Africa. If you look on the right-hand side, it's a local brand in Ghana. It's like a YDE concept, young designers with local design talent, and it's doing exceptionally well. So if you look at the housing, this is Kilamba in Luanda. It's a massive housing project that was done by the government. And transport. Luanda's got called Allo Taxi, which is the equivalent of Uber. So getting around in Luanda now, it's much easier than it was 3-4 years ago. So if you look at brands wanting to enter the market, ShopRite's still to open with Lano City in DRC. If you look at Angola, recently the Sonai group from Portugal entered with Wharton, Zippy, Mo Sport Zone under a franchise agreement. There are still brands to open in the market that committed to schemes like Max, Baby Shop, Mango, Lifestyle. And if you take Mozambique, for example, Sonai's entered with their Zippy and Mo under franchise. Pizza Hut opened not so long ago in Mozambique as well. In one of the malls that's opening end of this year, we've secured Ocean Basket and Mug and Bean to open in Bayer Mall. And there's obviously we are working with other retail brands to enter the markets, which is unfortunately it's a process. If you look at the previous slide, how the world sees Africa, it's an education. So if you look at the population, Angola, Mozambique, DRC, Mozambique and Angola's got similar population, however it's two different countries, different challenges of doing business. DRC has got quite a high, almost 80 million people. And how does that compare to the rest of the world? If you look at the population stats between Angola, Mozambique, and DRC, it's still more than Zambia. However, Zambia's retail, they've got much more retail centers than you've got in Angola, Mozambique, or DRC. GDP, Angola's GDP did drop since 2014. Mozambique still got on a low base, and one of the presenters yesterday mentioned about a 25% growth in the near future, which I think I can understand because it's coming from a low base. And then you've got the DRC, that's still higher than Mozambique. And if you compare that to the rest of the world, Angola's GDP is still more than Kenya's. If you look at the GDP per capita, Angola is still the highest. Mozambique and DRC is almost on par. If you compare that to the rest of the world, the rest of Southern Africa, including Kenya. So if you look at this city, and you compare that to the previous pictures we showed, it's a beautiful skyline, and it's Luanda. So that's a snapshot of the retail currently in Angola. The little blue dots are still to open. In the last 3 years, and there's some guys that's been in Angola, the retail map has substantially changed in the last 3 years, despite all the difficulties of doing business, foreign currency issues, getting money in and out of the country. And if you look at, the retail map is changing. So if you look at the existing retail in Angola, we're looking at about 150,000 square meters of formal retail shopping centers as we know it. Over the next 24 months, we're looking at another plus minus 120,000 square meters that's coming on stream throughout Angola. And it includes the second-tier cities, as well as the standalone ShopRite centers. Xiaomi in Quilamba, that opened in April this year, that's 27,000 square meters. It hosts the brands like Cortefiel, Springfield, Women's Secret, the Sports Zone, Mo, Zippy, Cinema, big entertainment food court. Fortaleza is 20,000 square meters, which is now set to open last quarter this year. Construction is almost completed. And if you look at some of the main brands from a South Africa point of view, trading in the market, including the international brands. And then you've got some brands that recently entered, as I mentioned earlier, Wharton, Sports Zone, Zippy, Mo. And then obviously we've signed deals with Mango, Max, Baby Shop, Splash, Lifestyle, that still needs to open on the R&B schemes that's due to set to open in completion by 2019. So we move over to the next city. It's Maputo. Again, the retail face of Mozambique, including Matola, Maputo, have changed over the last 3 years. If you look at the existing retail, which we inclusive of the smaller ShopRite centers, is about 60,000. This year alone, that opened or set to open is about another 100,000 square meters. And there's another about 80,000 squares planned for in the next 24 months. So, Bayer Mall is set to open in October this year, 30,000 square meters, which was anchored by Game, Spar, Woolworths. There's a smaller inner city development called City Mall, scheduled to open phase 1, quarter 4 of this year. So if you look at some of the brands, you'll see more South African brands are trading in the Mozambican market than in the Angolan market. Brands that we recently signed up to enter the market. Continent will be also entering the market from Portugal, but under a different name. We're not sure what the current or the new name would be. So let's move over to the panel discussion.
Hello. Good morning to everybody. Well, Mozambique, which is a country that I know the most, it's clearly a place where the challenges are a big issue. Basically, Mozambique is a country where everything is up to be done yet. Coming from a past that nothing was done, we are now looking to a place where retail is taking up, and as you have seen, from a very, very low base in terms of GLA, Only during this year, we are going to assist to a duplication of the GLA in the Maputo area. The impact is very big, and it has been a very high challenge for the retailer, who is faced with several questions. And from Mozambique, the first one is how is going the country to be in the future? Is it the right time to start and make the first movements in the country? From our point of view, it is time to do it, and the opening of the new malls and the entry of some international brands, it's demonstrating that Mozambique is becoming a very attractive place to start the operations. Nevertheless, there's some uncertainty, of course, due to the country specifics, namely political instability, which is being taken care of and very well by the new government. Public financials are being taken care of also by, in conjunction with the IMF. And of course, which are the growth paths of the country, which will allow retailers to count with GDP growth and increased purchasing power. And that answer is being given very clearly by the final investment decision made by Exxon and ENI for the first natural gas offshore plant, which is going to be a fact in the north of Mozambique, in the Cabo Delgado province, which by itself demonstrates that the country will have the future granted in terms of resources to foster the development of infrastructures to develop the economy. The investment of new retail in the country, we have seen it and assisted that some of the big brands are being careful in doing that, and as a way to avoid the financial uncertainty, have chosen the path of doing franchise operations, looking for local investors who know better the market and who are willing to invest in their brands. And more we are filling up the market and the retail, the new retail spaces and GLA with that kind of operation, which has been very successful in the country.
Thanks. Quintus, from a retail point of view, what challenges do you experience and what are the barriers to enter the retail sector?
Thanks, Vikas. Am I on there? We've been around there for 11 years now, and I think at present we are most likely at the bottom of the cycle. Let's hope so. The challenges have been repatriating funds once you've done your investment. From a retail perspective, that is not entirely possible with the capital investment projects. And what we found is that initially when we opened up shop 11 years ago, we went through coming off a very low base, went through a boom. We did pretty well. Then things slowed down. About 24 months ago, the slowdown was exceptional in that foreign spending was totally curbed. Mozambican residents or people that held Mozambican bank cards and credit cards couldn't use their cards outside of the country or only to a very limited. That had a blessing in that it actually stimulated expenditure at local retailers. That has now been lifted, so we actually felt the pinch of that a little bit. Even though that the restrictions in the economy as a whole seems to be recovering, that is pinching us a bit. But nevertheless, we are opening up a new store. We are expanding. It's a bit of a leap of faith, but we believe it's the right time to expand now. We see what is happening up north with the oil and gas fields coming on. We look at the takeoff of China with coal and the stockpiles that were in Tet that is now going to find its way out and the economy will flow in. Now we consider Mozambique to be Africa light. There's a lot of things that are much easier to do business in Mozambique than would be Angola or the case of the DRC or Nigeria. And it is a very pleasant environment to do business in. as long as you get you understand the legislation and the regulations, and you make sure that you work within the confines of the various regulations, and work with it and not fight it, it is not impossible. From the time that we decided to open our first business, and we started getting all our ducks in a row, it was about 4 months, and we were trading, and we did everything legally, and we've been avoiding any kind of corruption. We do not pay bribes for nothing, for nobody ever. Sometimes the truck gets held up for a while, and then it goes on. So in general, we find it very pleasant, and for the sake of competition, I'd like them to perceive the entry barriers higher than it is, but it's actually not that bad.
Okay. And how's the local market taking to the brand, the Mr. Price brand as such? And is your products different from SA?
The product offering is much of a muchness. Because of the cost of doing business, overheads, the franchise model, the logistics, we retail at a premium. The price in Mozambique is maybe about 60% more expensive than you would find the same garment in South Africa. Now, as a result, it's quite interesting that we find that we attract the very high LSM, like everybody may be anticipating, and then we also attract the very low LSM. So the middle class that travels to South Africa and travel abroad on a regular basis, they would not shop us as aggressively as the low LSM that do not have access to travel abroad. Then by dumb luck, our anchor store or our biggest operation is in relative close proximity to the ferry. And every day, a lot of foot passengers crosses the river from Katembe into Mozambique, and they flood past our shop. And then in the afternoon, they flood back. And that forms quite a big portion. So the foot traffic forms quite a big portion of our retail, like was indicated in the previous presentation. And then the high LSM, we find high LSM shoppers. We have shoppers that shop our shop actually every week. The same people come in. It's a very small market in Mozambique. Maputo is just over 1 million people. 52 times a year plus, they come into my shop. So the necessity to have freshness in your shop, regular stock inputs, a regular replenishment of stock, and to have current and up-to-date stock, not to try and sell Valentine's stock in April or Christmas stock in January, to be efficient in what you do and to respect the market. And I also find the consumers, they are slightly more fashionable and value conscious than your South African average consumer. They have a very good eye for fashion. They are slightly more of a Brazilian/European continental mindset. And so you definitely cannot be perceived as offering a different product or an inferior product that you would offer into other markets. That would be very negatively perceived in Mozambique, and some of the other retailers had a similar experience.
Thank you. Then the following questions for both developers and retailers. Do you experience issues at customs? And if so, how do you overcome these challenges?
To me?
Well, all of you.
Well, you know, I wear two hats. I'm involved with city logistics as well. We are retail transporters. So we transport to the retail industry. So I'm quite involved in the border crossing process. And we follow the rules. We try and stay abreast of all legislation. It does sometimes change unexpectedly. But generally, there's fair warning with regards to there's been a new process implemented at the borders. There's fair warning when it comes through. You need to get your ducks in a row, and you have to work with the system. You definitely need to have staff on the ground that are Portuguese speaking, that understand the process, and we take a firm stance against any kind of bribery and corruption. At the border post, I used to visit Mozambique on a regular basis, driving up and down. I used to be known as Mr. Price. And every time I come through the border post, some official would pull me aside and tell me, you know, you're paying way too much duties, man. Give me your card, let's talk, I can help you. And we've just always politely indicated that, no, we're happy with the way we do things, and we keep our noses clean. And I think that is a valuable lesson, especially for Mozambique. From the beginning, just put your foot down. You will not pay a bribe for nothing, no matter how long it takes. And eventually it becomes easier and you gain respect of the authorities down the line as well.
Dion?
When we did the Grand Towers Abuja Mall, some of the stuff like the water treatment plant through Nigeria, through the Papa Mall, took like 90 days and longer. I mean, our stuff in the Congo arrives 12 days, and we use international companies like Bertling or Necotrans or Belore. It could be on site in 12 days later. Yes, sometimes there's issues on the border. We don't get involved with it. We use reputable companies. Is 12 days compared to 90 days, is that a problem? Definitely not. So if it was in a scoring out of 10, I would give Nigeria 1 on that. I don't know how it's currently. I haven't been developing there for the last couple of years. But Congo is very easy. I mean, the cathaloids and the cobalt and all of that stuff goes in and out. Now and then there's a hold up at the Kumuzaleza border or somewhere, and the stuff stands for a couple of days, but nowhere near 20 days or 3 months, nothing like that.
So Louis?
So I was just going to say, because I mean, we've obviously from a developer point of view, we tend to outsource most of the stuff so to the contractors to get the stuff across the border. What I have heard anecdotally from the retailers is sometimes, a question for Mr. Price, particularly into Mozambique, is every now and then you come with something new that they haven't come across before. And there's a little bit of a delay around that, but generally speaking, once they get comfortable with it, it becomes a much quicker process. And that's second-hand news. I'm not sure if you guys have found the same thing.
Yeah, we have a little anecdotal story. When we opened up one of our shops, we decided with the shop fitters that we're going to stick to the South African look and feel and export the tiles from South Africa. And then some over-aggressive quantity surveyor decided to put the tile cement on the same truck. And we shipped it. And when the truck arrived into the customs port, it transpired that it was illegal to import cement into Mozambique at that point in time. And so the whole truck and everything got arrested. But after a lot of negotiations and without bribes, we managed to convince the local officials that it was tile glue and not tile cement, and then the truck came through. But some things you need to be aware of what is happening. But we've really, and also the Mozambican people as a whole, when you approach things in a non-aggressive and a very friendly, amicable way, and not aggressive and not push for time, and it doesn't need to come out tomorrow, you tend to resolve a problem much easier. The harder you push, the more resistance you will get. So I find attitude and adjusting your attitudes, adjusting your expectations slightly when you deal in Mozambique will go a long way for your blood pressure and will make things eventually come out easier.
So coming to the second part of this question, so in the last couple of years, do you see an improvement? Has the customs controls and import of stuff, regulations improved?
Yes, definitely so. The process just before, we had to take our truck into a customs yard. So, we do road transport. You go through the border, and then you get a clearing there, or a temporary kind of clearing. So you need to report into the customs yard in Maputo. Then the vehicle enters the yard. There it stays until it's cleared, and then it gets cleared. Now we have a process of drive-through, get cleared at the border. I dispatch my truck here in Durban. I dispatch my trucks on a Sunday. Monday morning it's at the border. It crosses through. It delivers quite often Monday night. It hits the way back, or latest on Tuesday evening, it's out of Mozambique and it's on its way back to South Africa. It's fairly painless, but it took us a while to get there.
Yeah, because I think from our point of view as well, just all the retailers that we're dealing with, but also on the development side, we found over the last 2 years developing BioMall, there's been an improvement in the process at the Mozambique borders. But I think two of the things that we did is the first is we signed all of our subbies and our contractors up to our ESG standards, and those are usually sometimes higher than the requirements by law in the country, but made it very clear that that's what had to happen. And by and large, it's happened that way. Well, it has definitely happened that way. And secondly, we've planned for the delays. And what's been very interesting is is over time, those delays have definitely shrunk. The last 2 years, we found specifically that it's improved significantly, particularly at the South Africa-Mozambique, the Maputo border post.
All right. So the next question, Quintus, I don't know your funding and developers. Do you apply for funding in country, and how difficult is to source funding for your investment in these countries?
We have quite good relationships with the local banks there. We do have facilities with the local banks, but that's mostly operating cash type of facilities. We generally repatriate funding from South Africa, and the interest rates are just much more stable on this side, as well as the exchange rates. So you know what you're in for. A few people have been have had trouble with regards to raising funds in Mozambique. I can think specifically about the Maresh development that was funded in Mozambique, and that didn't turn out well. So yeah, we prefer to raise our funds. I don't know. I've never really pursued aggressive funding in Mozambique, but we raise our funds in South Africa and capitalize from here.
Dion, DRC?
I would like to do a little bit of example to get everyone awake. So can everyone stand? I just want to show you guys an example to answer the question. Can we quickly stand? Yeah, everyone. So everyone that has been to the Congo, DRC, please keep standing, and the rest can please all sit. Okay, so there's a couple. So everyone that's invested in the Congo to date, please keep standing. The rest, please sit. Okay, there's 3 people in the room. I guess I don't need to say much more than that. Thanks, guys. Sit.
I lost everything.
I think
what
Dion,
is,
you should have asked who still got the investment in DRC.
I think a lot of people see DRC is like what they see in Blood River in the movies and these type of things, and what they read in King's Leopold's Ghost and these type of things. But what people must understand is also is that the DRC has moved forward significantly. We've seen international companies like Ivanhoe, Glencore, and you speak to the Glencore guys that have less issues in Congo than they have in South Africa. And there's new things like OHADA law that came in. You can actually take a government official or government department, you can take them to international OHADA court, you know. So the country has improved significantly from where it was, but the people's understanding, I mean, that you can give up on the banks understanding that you can ask all the 4 big banks if any of their credit committee people has ever been in the Congo. They haven't been. But then you see international companies like Molybom earlier this year bought 60% in Tenki for Marumi from Freeport McMoran American Group, and they paid $2.6 billion. Now that's a significant amount of money, and the list goes on and on. And like I said yesterday, all of us uses smartphones, or some of us uses electric cars. Go Google the electric car projections in the future to get rid of smog in cities, etc. There's a product called Cobalt in there, and it comes out of the Congo. It comes out of Lubumbashi, and we sit smack bang in the middle of it. We're signing people into our offices, etc. But you go speak to financiers to come into a shopping center with ShopRite already signed up, Creamier Inn, Pizza Inn already in Lubumbashi doing exceptionally well, and the guys are not interested. They just turn around. Why? Because, like we've seen, 3 people has invested in the Congo.
You mentioned yesterday to me that you also signed Steers. Was it Steers Lebanese?
Yeah, we've got board approvals, but we've had a partner that was in Zambia. We had a launching event in October 2014, Peter Engelbrecht, and everyone was there, and it was a big hoo-ha, and then he kicked the can down the road, nothing happened. And then by last year when he exited, all of these companies has board approvals to come, and we've got the banks in the Congo at 7,000 squares to raise $7 million to get it done, because we've already done the earthworks, we've done the civils, we've done the building plan approval, the EIA, everything. It's been now a 3 months exercise, and we're probably going to miss the rainy season, but it's not a problem. I mean, we've got housing and we've got offices to continue, but come April next year when our fund is up, and we're going to go big time in it, because people believe in us. There's so much opportunity in the Katanga province, and yeah, is it always easy? No, but we embrace the suck and we just get on with it.
So with the residential and the offices you've already completed, Was portion of that local fund, or was it all offshore funding?
No, it's all, we don't have any debt or any zero gearing. It's only our own funds, my partners and myself, and we've been hitting it at, and it's actually good. We're now to the point where we probably won't do any more gearing. We just go on private equity. And we've seen now like AEL Explosives, 100% owned by ACI South Africa, took up one of our ground floors of Office Block C. We've seen Orioncom, Intersys, Mazars auditors that signed up with us this year. So now we're in a good place, and we just keep on hitting it. And as we see, I mean, Bell Equipment took 5 of our houses, United Nations stays in our houses. So we're slowly getting there. I mean, it's not easy, and what we've learned is people are so used to picking fruit in the old days in Nigeria. It just came like this, and South Africa. And with us, we've never had it easy. So you look under that chair, you look under that chair, you look there and stuff. You don't know where the fruit is going to come from. But eventually it comes. You must just look hard enough. And yeah, we lose one hair for every challenge. That's why I look like I look.
Louis, do you guys apply for funding in country?
Yeah, because we do. We've been very well supported by our friends at Standard Bank in our Mozambique venture. So just to sort of recap a little bit, we're opening Bahia Mall, the 30,000 square meter shopping center, the first A grade in Maputo.
I know.
Vickers, you do know, you've been involved in that, and I think you're aware of the challenges, although you haven't mentioned any of them yet. So it'd be good to get your perspective on what challenges you're finding from a leasing perspective. But in terms of funding, we did apply with Standard Bank, and we'll have a mixture of dollar-denominated and local currency. Has it proven challenging? Absolutely. 2 years ago, the prospects for Mozambique looked like one thing, and then all of a sudden they managed to non-disclose $1 billion worth of loans, of which 500 million, I think, is still not accounted for. Yeah. It's a big number. It makes Zuma's efforts look a little bit half-baked. But it has resulted in a local interest rate, which is very difficult to work with at the moment. And the fact is that the exchange rate is now significant. It's actually increased against the dollar. So they've done their job. The Bank of Mozambique has done a very good job at stabilizing the country. But unfortunately, that interest rate has stayed high. So you're looking at local borrowing costs in Mozambique. It's somewhere near the 30% dollar mark. So it's more expensive than our equity, and a lot of people have complained about that. So it is challenging in that context, but at least there is debt available, where I know Dion has struggled quite a bit in the DRC. And Angola, there's no one talking about Angola here?
No.
Okay.
But the elections went well.
The election, yeah. Difficult country, though.
Not so.
Okay.
So I think we already got half an opinion from Dion on the views and outlook of the retail sectors in Mozambique, Angola, and DRC. If I have to speak now, ask this question again, Quintus, what's your views on the outlook of Mozambique and the retail?
Yeah, I can half answer for Angola as well. It's a leap of faith at this stage. We are pretty positive that it is going to pick up. The economy, we found, is loosely coupled to South Africa, but slightly ahead of the cycle. So we anticipate the Mozambican economy to recover first before the South African economy does. And then it's coming from such a poor base with so much negative, and I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I do not know how much of the negative publicity that Mozambique has suffered recently has been linked to the fact that there was capital gains tax payable on the gas deal up in the north of Mozambique. So the lower the Mozambican currency was, the cheaper that tax would have been. So, and then when the currency couldn't get any lower, that deal was formally declared. So the tax was then due and payable at that rate. And now things have turned and the currency is strengthening. There's going to be a lot of growth up north. So I think it's a very small economy, and a small swallow makes a summer. And I really think that a lot of good things are going to happen. The Angolan economy right now I can sell everything. I'll be able to sell the shop fittings. The problem is just getting your money out once you've sold it. But they have done some very good fiscal management there. They didn't go and print money. They didn't take up the opportunity of linking to the Chinese currency. There's been a lot of good things that was done in Angola recently, and we basically the appointed franchisees for Angola as well now.
Can we sign?
So we'll eventually go in there. We would just need to get our ducks in a row with repatriating of money. But from an actual retail and selling point of view, and from a logistics point of view in the DRC, ShopRite is trucking their product all the way from South Africa via Angola right into Kinshasa now. And that is only recently. You know, before, if you were in trouble in Kinshasa, you had to get on a plane. You couldn't walk home. You couldn't get in a truck. Now, there's actually an overline route into DRC. It's stable enough economically to go there, and it's physically possible. And so I anticipate the Kinshasa economy to start opening up. Lubumbashi is also Africa light. It's not as bad as Kinshasa, in my opinion. But I believe that things are going to start looking up in Kinshasa again, even though I lost money there. I think it's a good place.
Dion?
But I think because so much GDP comes out of the Katanga province where we are, and you know, we've gone a long way with the government. We represent the DRC on infrastructure conferences as South Africans. So we help them and we really move on, and I think we've got a great future there. So we'll keep on, we're entrenched, we've got a 220-hectare development. And yeah, you know what, people, it's the same days in the beginning of 2009, Nigeria, where we started with Stanbic on the financing, and I had to give them everything, and only Actors done financing with them before. And today everyone is piling in. I think a lot of the people is scared. We had a hotel group, for instance, that came in, CEO, CFO, head of business development, signed it off, numbers work. They had a board meeting in Kenya. They phoned me in April last year, and they said, sorry, we can't do it, because the board said it's easier to tell our investors that something went wrong in Nigeria or Kenya, but we can't tell them something has gone wrong in the Congo. That word just doesn't mix. And that was the reality, and I appreciated their feedback. And I think, you know, looking back, we're just going to start seeing more people like we see. Mazar's auditors are now in there. We're going to see more retail. We're going to do some stuff with Mr. Price. I've put people in contact, signed a master license agreement. And yeah, we're going to just keep on taking it one step at a time. And yeah, watch the space.
Okay.
And it's not easy, I must say. It will never be easy. I mean, to get our power agreement in place with Snell and to go out on tender to step down 15 MVA to 1.5 MVA meant we had to fly our teams to Kinshasa, their teams down for 18 months before we could get our power agreement in place. So it's not easy, but I mean, it's like your wife is the first baby that she delivers. I mean, God sent you this beautiful woman, and then she hasn't slept for 3 or 4 days, and then it becomes the devil's sister. But after you've had 4 or 5 babies, that's all you know, and then that's how it is, and you just get on with life,
Okay. I was just asked, we must start to wrap up. So just a quick question, I'm going to open it up here. Are there any specific threats to the growth of the formal retail sector, such as online and informal, that will be threatening the formal retail shopping center?
I think Congo is too far too early. We first have to build the malls before that's going to happen, so no threat there. And the country is so big. What people don't understand when they say President Kabila doesn't want to have the election, these people physically have to drive in boats up rivers with their bicycles on the boats and then cycle to communities where they get 3-4 weeks later, only to have to get them on the voter roll. It's not that he doesn't want to have the election. I'm not punting for President Kabila. I'm just saying the logistics. If you speak to the people involved, so having a guy deliver an Amazon package in Goma, I don't think that's going to happen quite soon, but maybe you guys have a different view there.
Because from our point of view, online isn't going to exist in our markets for a while, particularly these frontier markets, which I'd probably characterize Angola, Mozambique, and DRC. You need IDs, you need addresses. The smartphone technology is there, but it's difficult to deliver. So that last mile delivery difficult. South Africa, different story. It's coming. It's still difficult. I worked with a logistics company here, and the distances are still proving difficult. Online, less of a threat. I would say the biggest threat to the formal sector is still how people get goods into the country. If your informal sector, like in Nigeria, is managing to land goods cheaper than the formal sector is managing to sell goods, there's a big disconnect, and it speaks to there must be massive corruption or difficulties, at least, getting goods into the country. So on an equal footing, formal retail will prosper in these markets, but it's just getting the rules and regulations in place and the processes in place. So, encouraging to hear from the Mr. Price guys that it's easy enough into a market like Mozambique, because I think then formal retail will flourish. Another big thing is obviously the depth of the tenant market. At the moment, it's a bit of a challenge in Mozambique, I think, for developers. So that would be me. And I think, Vickers, you know that. We're opening our store with about 40% South African tenants, and the balance is either Mozambique or international brands. Once we get those guys in, I think that's going to significantly help some of the smaller outlying retail centers. The guys like Terrace Africa and Atterbury have opened up with predominantly South African.
Yeah.
We've tried our hardest, and you're aware of some of the conversations around this on making our center feel and look not like a South African shopping center, and with a wider mix. And I think once that wider mix starts taking off, it's going to help the retail market even more in a Mozambique context.
Okay, thanks.
A modern retailer is slightly different from your conventional old retailers, as everybody would imagine. But one of your triggers of success, especially with an apparel retailer, is that you need to have a regular turnover of stock and regular freshness in your stock. Because nobody gets it right all the time. You do get merchandise and it just doesn't perform due to a climate or due to a fashion, or people don't like white clothes or they don't like black clothes over New Year, whatever the case may be. So you'll always end up with a distressed section of your stock. The only way to get distressed stock out of a business is to have momentum through the business with fresh stock, and then when people come in and they buy good apparel, they will pick up the markdown units and it will go out. The moment you don't put fresh stock into your store, it looks like a locust have hit you, because then you only see bad stock. And then when a consumer walks in, it looks terrible, and you create terrible perception that that consumer doesn't come back. In Africa in general, because of the people not being very mobile, and also because of very small communities, you have a regular client base that shop you often. That's why the restaurants in Mozambique are excellent, because a bad restaurant will close down in 3 weeks because there are no consumers. The good guys go to that same restaurant 4 times a week, and then the food is excellent. So you need to be mindful of that. So in order to do that, first of all, you need a good logistic line that you can drop your stock into your store on a regular basis, at least once a week. And then in order to do that, you need to have a regular flow of cash back to where the stock comes from. Now, the ShopRite guys are quite innovative in Angola, where they actually use their property fund in South Africa, and they use that to buy baked beans with. They ship the baked beans to Angola, they sell it, they take the local currency, and they buy property with it, and they don't repatriate the money back to South Africa. I do not know for how long that is sustainable. That is what they do at the station. That's why they're making a killing. But they are slowly just transferring their assets on their balance sheet from South Africa to Angola. You need to have, and that is our biggest barrier for entry in Angola, and for your typical tenant that would be in a modern shopping center, if you can assure them that there's proper logistics to get the stock there, and that there's a proper way of getting their funds out in order to pay for fresh stock to come in, that will go a long way to securing the confidence of a retailer that they know the business model would be successful, over and above the other peripheral things of your markup and whether the customers are there. Because if those things die, and I'm quite involved with the price shops in Nigeria and everywhere, and the moment your supply chain die, your businesses go into some severe distress. And those are the important things. With regards to e-commerce, I can quickly mention that e-commerce work well in Nigeria, apparently. There's some very successful e-commerce retailers. Even though there's no permanent addresses and everything's in chaos, what they have is they have a fleet of motorbikes that arrive at the door, and then they've got the e-commerce, and they say, this guy wants this shirt, and he bought it online for 200 Rand. Here's the shirt, give me 150 Rand, go deliver. Then they deliver, they go find the guy, they got his cell phone number, they go find him, and they collect their 200 rand when they deliver it. And if they don't deliver it, they bring the shirt back and they get their 150 rand back. And they have guys that go to different areas, and the guys from the local community, and they phone the guy and they arrange to meet him somewhere. And they basically, the online retail work there where the distributor is actually selling the product on. And it's an African solution for African problem, and it works well apparently.
Thanks. On the last question, Louis is going to kill me on this one. Is there any alternative to US dollar leases?
No. No, because look, we're actually exploring with one of our banking partners an alternative to offer the tenants at the very least. In these markets, particularly Mozambique, Angola, and DRC, they're largely still US dollar-driven economies, which makes life a bit easier. If we were having this conversation around some of the more diversified economies, that's a trickier conversation to have. But at the moment in these economies, you know, Angola has this issue about repatriating funding. That's a big issue, but it's not related to this. You can still get your dollar leases. Mozambique, dollar leases are largely there or thereabouts, and we will soon come to the market with a solution which offers tenants something that works for us and works for them. So are there alternatives? Yes, they are, but in these frontier markets, for a while now, until they build up the reserves and until they diversify their economies enough, everyone is happier transacting in dollars, not just us, the landlords, but also the hotels, the restaurants, everyone. So as long as that remains the case, people forget how difficult it was for the South Africa to come off a peg to the dollar. You know, and that was years ago, and this is a large economy. For these smaller guys to get there, it's going to take a while longer. We hope they do get there. That will be better for all of us, but not at the moment.
Yeah, and the issue is going to be tied strictly to the forex stability of those countries, and of course the ability to fund locally. And as it is not a reality right now, it's not going to happen so soon to have alternatives to the US dollars. In Mozambique, there's been some acceptance to the US dollars, particularly now that the forex has stabilized, and so the perspective of having surprises in terms of purchasing inventory, etc., has gone from the big picture of retailers. In the past years, that was a big issue, and some of the retailers had a very big problem with sudden exchange rate drop in the country.
I think the DRC, there's a little bit different, and in the sense that the World Bank says the total gold mined to date is estimated about $8 trillion, where the Congo's mineral wealth is estimated about $24 trillion. And it's not only oil, like, for instance, Nigeria. You've got cobalt, you've got copper, you've got diamonds, you've got gold, you've got gas, you've got oil, etc. So we do see, in the 4 years that we've been there and had to repatriate money, no problems whatsoever. Dollars is well known, everyone goes on the dollar basis. So yeah, I don't think we're on that side having problems, because there's more copper and products going out than really coming in. So from that point of view, it seems to be fine, and it's also well regulated. Also, it seems from our end of the scale. But our tenants, they pay office leases and housing leases and stuff in dollars, and in 4 years we've not had one problem with them paying invoices from any point.
Okay, thank you. Are we going to open up the floor for some questions?
Hi, thank you, Vickers. Patrick Katabwa from Cushman and Wakefield. What we've observed is that a lot of the trade that is taking place in Kitwe and in Ndola, especially around month end in your retail centers, are actually customers coming from the DRC doing their mass month end purchases, typically paying in dollars. So if you look at DRC or Lubumbashi, I totally agree with Dion in the sense that you've got a willing customer, the spending power is there, and you also have tenants that are ready to pay top dollar in terms of lease. So my question is, apart from political risk, what other risks are the financiers raising for not being able to participate in your schemes? Because you look at the mining companies, regardless of French law, regardless of political instability, etc., they're still there and they're still operating. So what are the mining companies doing right that the developers are not doing?
I think they get their finance from outside the country. I mean, we've been speaking, like I said earlier, to all the banks. I mean, Standard Bank, they say they're committed to the DRC, they're not. They haven't had any of their credit committee, I've checked it with them, been to the Congo, not one. They've got 5 ATMs, I think that's what the last count was that they told us a while ago. So you're not going to get anywhere with them. And the local banks, TMB Bank and BCDC and these guys, they don't do terms for longer than 2 years. So you can't do debt finance or gearing based on a 2-year term. So, yeah, there's no real solution there. I think DFIs, CDC, and these type of institutions probably going to be long-term is probably the route to go. But not with the local banks and definitely not with the South African banks.
Any more? All right, thank you everyone. I think that's a wrap. Can we go have lunch?